He used to imagine growing old with someone, but now his mornings are silent. One mug, one chair, no conversation, and no regret. Shared coffee in the morning, matching rocking chairs by the window. Quiet evenings filled with soft conversation and familiar laughter. But somewhere between the divorce papers and the nights spent alone in peace, something changed. He stopped chasing, stopped apologizing, stopped believing that being with someone was always better than being alone. And you know what? He didn't become cold. He became clear. So if you're one of those men, still kind, still capable of love, but no longer willing to give your soul away for scraps of connection, this message is for you. Because today, we're not talking about bitterness. We're talking about boundaries. We're not talking about giving up on love. We're talking about finally choosing peace. Let's walk through the real reasons why older men are staying single, and why, for many of them, it's the best decision they've ever made. 1. Divorce didn't just end a marriage, it ended his willingness to try again. On paper, it looked like a separation, a legal process, a signature, a final court date. But for him, it was a collapse, not just of a home, but of faith, of the quiet, stubborn belief that love, when fought for, would last. He stayed when it was hard. He apologized first. He compromised, even when it chipped away at who he was. And still, he lost her, and with her, the part of himself that believed love was safe. He didn't just lose a house or a pension. He lost the certainty that showing up was enough, because it wasn't calm, and the silence after the divorce wasn't calm. It was a vacuum. It echoed with, why? It pulled at every memory he'd buried. It whispered, was any of it real? He rebuilt, yes, brick by brick, new routines, new priorities, a smaller apartment, but a bigger sense of self. But this time, he built walls too, not to shut the world out, but to protect the small, quiet peace he fought to find. He doesn't hate love, but he respects it now. He sees it not as a fairy tale, but as a risk, one he's no longer willing to take lightly. Because when love ends, it doesn't just leave. It takes pieces of you with it. And after surviving that kind of loss, he'd rather keep the pieces he has left than gamble them on a smile that may walk away again. 2. Dating feels like a game he no longer wants to play. There was a time when dating felt like discovery, excitement, possibility. Now, it feels more like a performance, a job interview with no clear reward. He scrolls through profiles filled with filters, bios with buzzwords, messages that start and end with shallow banter. The rules have changed. It's interesting, but not too intense. Be honest, but not too vulnerable. Be consistent, but not clingy. It's exhausting. He's not afraid of connection. He's tired of chasing it through artificial conversations and emotionally unavailable strangers. He's tired of being sized up based on income, age, and hairline. Tired of pretending he loves brunch or yoga or things he's never cared about, just to seem normal. And what he wants? Depth, stillness, shared silence. Can't be swiped into. So he steps out of the game. Not because he couldn't compete. He's lived a full life, earned wisdom, and holds real value. But because the prize no longer feels genuine. He doesn't want attention. He wants authenticity. And in today's dating world, that feels increasingly rare. So when friends say, you should get back out there, he just smiles, because they don't understand. He's not avoiding love. He's avoiding performing for it. And for a man who has finally made peace with who he is, the last thing he wants is to put on a mask just to be seen. 3. Peace has replaced passion, and that's a good thing. He remembers the thrill, the sparks, the intensity of being completely swept up in someone, the kind of love that made you lose sleep, lose reason, lose yourself. But he also remembers the crash. The arguments went in circles, the anxiety of not knowing where things stood, the quiet panic of trying to fix something you didn't break. Now, he doesn't want fire. He wants warmth. He doesn't crave the rush. He craves the calm. There's peace in making coffee without walking on eggshells. There's joy in choosing what to watch, when to sleep, and how to spend his weekends without negotiations or moods swinging like doors. He no longer feels guilty for liking his space. He no longer explains why solitude feels like a gift, not a curse, because for the first time in years, He's not bracing for the next emotional ambush. He's not second-guessing every word he says. He's not performing calmness, he's living it. People ask, "Don't you miss having someone?" And maybe once in a while, late at night, he does miss the sound of another voice, but he doesn't miss the cost of earning it. Because peace, once tasted, becomes sacred. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't leave him questioning his worth. He traded passion for peace. And in doing so, he found a version of love that no partner had ever offered him. The love of stillness. The love of self-trust. The love of not being drained to be desired. And that's a trade he'll never regret. 4. The women around him no longer reflect what he needs. He walks into the grocery store on a Saturday morning. The fluorescent lights are harsh. The carts squeak. And as he moves down the aisle, he notices them women around his age. Tired. Worn down. Some are still clinging to a youth who left quietly years ago. Others are angry at a world that moved on without them. It's not judgment. It's an observation. He's not looking for perfection. He's not asking for magazine beauty. But what he is looking for: softness, warmth, presence feels rare. What he often finds instead are women hardened by years of emotional battle, suspicious, guarded, quick to criticize, slow to trust. He understands. They've been hurt too, but he's not signing up to be someone's emotional rehab. He wants companionship, not conflict. A partner, not a project. And in too many conversations, he's reminded how little space is left for mutual joy. He doesn't want to be fixed. He doesn't want to fix anyone. He wants to laugh again, not defend himself again. He wants to share a moment, not be tested in one. And if that's not available, where he lives, in his town, in his circle, in his culture, then he'd rather stay single than pretend something fits when it doesn't. Because the older he gets, the more he understands, peace isn't found in a woman's arms. It's found in knowing you're not settling for someone who resents needing you. 5. He doesn't want to raise someone else's children. He raised his kids already. He went to the school plays, stayed up late for science projects, said no when it was hard, said yes when it mattered. He paid the bills, the braces, the heartbreaks. He did the work. Now in his 50s or 60s, he's not interested in taking on a new family, especially one with teenage baggage. It's not the children's fault. They didn't ask for this either. But walking into someone else's home, with rules already set, alliances already formed, is like entering a movie halfway through. You're never the main character. You're just trying to read the room. He's not interested in being called "you" by a 17-year-old who slams the door and mutters under their breath. He's not here to fight with kids who aren't his, and who doesn't want him there anyway. Worse yet, he's seen the trap before. The mother defends the child no matter what. The man becomes the outsider in his living room, expected to contribute, but not respected. And let's not forget the financial strings: college, cars, emergencies, that arrive with wide eyes and silent expectations. He didn't build this foundation, and he's not about to walk onto a roof that's already tilting. So when he says he's single by choice, part of that choice is self-preservation, because at this stage in life, he's not looking to play the father role all over again, especially when no one's looking to play the family he once knew. 6. He's lost interest in physical intimacy, and that's okay. There was a time when it dominated everything. A glance, a smile, a brush of the hand. They were sparks that set the whole day on fire. But now he doesn't chase those sparks. It's not that he can't, it's that he doesn't need to. The drive has changed, slowed, softened, and in its place, he's found something far rarer: calm. In his younger years, physical intimacy felt like proof of manhood, of worth, of connection. Now he knows it was often a substitute for being seen, not a confirmation of being loved. He doesn't need the pressure of performance, doesn't want the transaction, doesn't find pleasure in obligation. If connection happens, it must be real. It must come with trust, softness, and mutual presence, not negotiation or guilt. And if it never happens again, he's still okay, because he's discovered that there are other forms of closeness: reading beside someone in silence, sharing a walk, making dinner together without a word. He's not broken. He's just whole in a different way now. Let the world chase lust. He's chasing peace. Let others joke about dry spells. He'll take the drought, if it means fewer storms, because in the stillness, he's learned something few ever do. Physical intimacy without emotional safety is just noise, and his life finally is quiet. 7. He finally likes himself and doesn't want to lose that. It took years. Years of criticism masked as helpful advice. Years of walking on eggshells. Years of being told directly or indirectly that who he was wasn't enough. Too quiet, too logical, too reserved. Too much or never enough depending on the day. But after the divorce, after the dust settled, something strange happened. He started hearing himself again. His real voice. Not the edited version he used to use to keep the peace. He began rediscovering things that made him feel alive. Long walks, old music, fixing things with his hands. And he realized he actually likes who he is. He likes his routines. He likes how he thinks. He likes the way he loves. Slow, steady, loyal. So when someone new comes along and wants to improve him, shape him, challenge him to grow in ways that look a lot like compromise, he pauses, because he's not trying to be impressive anymore. He's trying to be true. And he knows from experience, losing yourself for love isn't love. It's abandonment of the worst kind. So when he says he's single, it's not a defense. It's a declaration. I finally became someone I respect, and I'm not risking that to be liked by someone who doesn't see it. 8. His health is slipping and he doesn't want to be a burden. It starts small. A slower climb up the stairs. A forgotten appointment. A new prescription on the nightstand. He doesn't panic. He doesn't complain. But quietly, he begins to notice. His body is aging. And along with it, so is his confidence. He used to feel invincible. Now, he feels cautious, measured, aware. And that awareness breeds humility and fear. Because love at this age isn't just romance. It's responsibility. What happens when his knees give out? What happens when he can't drive? What happens when it's her birthday? And he's the one who needs the cake cut for him. He doesn't want that. Not because he believes he's unworthy of care, but because he knows how heavy it can become. He watched his own father fade, watched his mother become more nurse than wife, and he promised himself he'd never put someone through that, especially not someone who didn't walk with him through his prime. So when people ask, wouldn't it be nice to have someone as you age? He smiles softly and says, sometimes, but deep down, he knows what he's really afraid of is being loved out of obligation, and he'd rather fade alone with dignity than be touched by hands that carry silent resentment. 9. He doesn't know how to connect anymore, and that's hard to admit. He was never great with words, but back then he didn't need to be. Life gave him connection by default, through work, through kids, through shared goals. Now, the rooms are quieter, the conversations fewer, the silence is longer. He wants connection. He misses it, but something's changed. He tries to talk to someone new, but the words feel clunky. The stories feel old. The emotions? Hard to explain. So he sticks to safe topics. The weather, the car, that one fishing trip 10 years ago. He wants to open up, but doesn't remember how. Too many conversations in the past were used against him. Too many feelings turned into arguments. Too many moments of vulnerability led to shame. So now, he smiles. He nods. He listens more than he speaks. And the world interprets that as disinterest, when it's actually just self-protection. Because connection requires risk. It requires being seen and maybe rejected. And after a certain age, rejection no longer feels like a bruise. It feels like confirmation. So when people say, you're too quiet, he doesn't correct them. He just thinks to himself, I'm not quiet, I'm careful, and the parts of me you'll never know are the ones I spent decades protecting. 10. He's already found what most men chase their whole lives. Peace. There was a time he thought peace came after love. After the house, the marriage, the milestones. But now, he knows peace doesn't arrive after love. Sometimes, it arrives instead of it. His days are quiet. His space is his own. His time belongs to no one but himself. He doesn't need to explain why he likes things a certain way, doesn't have to filter his thoughts, doesn't have to walk on eggshells or guess how someone feels based on silence. No more tension over dinner plans. No more pressure to talk about it. No more performing peace just to avoid a storm. This calm he lives in now, he built it, brick by quiet brick. He made his home a refuge. He made his solitude a sanctuary. And for the first time in his adult life, he doesn't feel drained by anyone. He still has love in him, but it's no longer disparate, no longer searching. He gives it to the sunrise, to the stranger at the coffee shop, to the rhythm of a day that asks for nothing in return. People say, "You must be lonely." And he answers, "Not anymore." Because loneliness is being unseen in the presence of someone else. Peace is being whole in the presence of yourself. And that's what he's found. Not the kind of happiness that makes you laugh out loud, but the kind that lets you sleep deeply, wake gently, and breathe freely. He's not waiting for someone to complete him. He's already home. So why are so many older men staying single? Not because they failed at love, not because they hate women, not because they gave up, but because they finally stopped apologizing for wanting something different, something quieter, something honest. They're not broken. They're not bitter. They're awake. They've lived enough years to know the cost of pretending, the weight of being misunderstood, the exhaustion of being needed, but never nurtured. And they've realized peace isn't a luxury, it's a right, and they're no longer willing to pay for love with their sanity. So they live alone, yes, but they laugh. They think. They build. They rest. They choose solitude not as a retreat, but as a return to the version of themselves they were always meant to become. And if love ever finds them again, it will have to knock softly, respectfully, willing to coexist with the calm they fought so hard to protect. Because at this age, being chosen is no longer the goal. Being at peace is. If this spoke to your story, let it be known. Leave a quiet comment below. I didn't choose loneliness. I chose myself. You're not alone in your solitude. You're surrounded by men who finally found freedom.